Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and you're on my YouTube channel, To Be Your Own Hero. I am a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient, and been battling cancer now for almost 17 months, and I am doing well, thriving, and I'm so happy to be here today. And don't have uh, any updates as far as progress, except for things are have maintained and are looking good. So that's basically the what's going on at the moment. But I am so happy and thrilled to have Christopher Geal on, and
Hey, Mark.
Chris is going to introduce himself and tell a little bit about him. But one of the things I want you to notice is that incredible smile that Chris has. That It's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, Chris, take it away, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, no worries, Mark, and thanks so much for having me, mate. Yeah, I guess I'm in the same boat as you in a way, and as many of us survivors are as well. So I'm a stage 3 rectal cancer survivor. But first and foremost, I'm an Australian. I'm a West Australian, originally from Perth, on the other side of the world, and now I live in Spain, in Europe, with my family over here, my wife and 2 kids. And I guess for me, like we've always been a global family, I guess, and we love to see the sights of the world and experience different people and different cultures and all that sort of thing. And I guess a few years ago, we were doing just that. And we were living in Ireland at the time, in Dublin. And I guess before that, I'd always worked all over the world and done all that sort of thing. And I was always a very kind of career-minded professional, so I was kind of ticking all the boxes as far as what I thought I had to do in my life. And I guess it was during that time that I started to feel a little bit unwell, some symptoms that have been plaguing me for quite some time. And me, being the busy person that I was too busy for everyone, including myself at the time. So that's when I went and had some symptoms checked out, I guess, at the time, and was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer at that point in time. So that was in 2018. I guess my life changed at that point, and that's when my cancer journey began from that point. So that's the I guess the short version, but there's a lot more to talk about there as well, mate. So.
So let's talk about that. You Let's talk about your diagnosis. What happened, uh, and how did you take that? How did you absorb that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, for me, like those symptoms were with me for quite a while, like a number of years. And before my diagnosis, I was told I had irritable bowel syndrome and hemorrhoids and all those sorts of conditions that have symptoms, I guess, that are consistent with colorectal cancer. The doctors, I guess, viewed me as too young and too fit. I didn't have any family history or anything like that. So I'd had these number of symptoms for a number of years, really. And it wasn't to the point that I started to lose weight and become tired and fatigued, that it was suggested that I have a colonoscopy, was the procedure that I had to have. But even when I had that scan, it was still under the pretext of I'll just check it out. It's probably not that, but just go and get checked out. So I went into that hospital on a day thinking I had irritable bowel syndrome. That's what I thought in my head, so,
Wow.
and I went in and I had that scan, and I guess I can really zero in on this to that point where going into the procedure, I guess, for the colonoscopy, I was only mildly sedated. So I was talking to the doctors, and one of the doctors was Australian. Back and forth, we were chatting away, and he was sort of the same. Oh, you're young and you're fit, and all that sort of thing. You'll be fine. We'll get this done, and then you'll be on your way. And I can remember this the split second where the body language changed between the two doctors, and the small talk stopped, and they just glanced to the side at each other, and then I started hearing words like biopsy and confirmation and scan and all this sort of thing. And at that point, they kind of just wished me on my way, but they didn't say a whole lot after that. And I went out into the waiting room, and I started to notice little things. I started to notice people that had gone in before me, leave before me, or gone in after me, leave before me, should I say? And I was sitting in that waiting room, and the place had pretty much emptied out. And I was sitting there, and by that stage, I kind of realised that something was up at that point. And a doctor came out, and she said, "Mr. Geal." I said, "Yes." She said, "Let's use this office over here. And is your wife on the way in?" And that's when things started to click into place as to what was happening. And that doctor to this day was pretty direct with me, because you hear sometimes they send away for scans or the confirmation, and it might take a couple of weeks and all that sort of thing. So you're kind of left up, a bit uncertain. For me, in my case, my cancer was pretty advanced, I guess, physically. So she was straight up there and then and said, "Look, we can send him away for scans, or I can tell you now, what I think, in my professional opinion, may be the case." And I said, "Just tell me now." I'm a kind of rip the band-aid off kind of guy. So I was just like, "Tell me now." And she says, "Well, what we've seen, I believe you have cancer, and we're fairly certain it's advanced, at that point in time." So, well, I was like, "So I don't have irritable bowel syndrome?" So, it was fairly life-changing then and there for that to happen. My wife came and picked me up from the hospital, and I just started to feel like, for the next couple of weeks, I call this period ground zero, because the way I describe it is everything in your life that you thought you knew about it is gone. It's just stripped away. All your plans, everything is gone. And it took a couple of weeks for me to kind of exist in that space. I guess it's a state of numbness is what I felt. Everyone responds differently, but I felt just numb. And just coming to terms and grappling with all the emotions of what was happening. I could have been terminal at that point. I didn't know. No one knows really at that point. So everyone's got to kind of weather the storm as they can. So it took a couple of weeks to come to terms. And at that point, and I think I've written about this before, where I just got to a point where I was like, I can't go on like this. I started to despair and wallow and not be myself. And I guess the defining moment for me was when I put my runners on. And I've always been a very keen runner. So I just started to run, and I started to train. And at that point, my plan came through. And once I had a plan, that for me, that was a defining moment, because I had a sequence of steps to get on with, and off I went. And I guess that's when the diagnosis became the journey. And I got stuck into it.
And he's saying that with a smile, So Chris and I were talking about that before we started up here. Uh, I think we both tend to smile a lot, and we're both happy to be here, and life is so precious, and it's so incredible, and that's one of the messages that we want to share with everybody is, cancer does not have to be a death sentence unless you want it to be, and so once you get that diagnosis, then it's so critical to move forward and act, and you can't stay in that same place, and so talk more about what was your plan moving forward. um, I know we met on Tim Soane's showing up perspectives on cancer, and you talked about your plan that you did for yourself, in addition to working with the oncologist and things like that. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the high level view I had of it was that cancer was going to revolve around my life. My life wasn't going to revolve around cancer. So cancer became just something that I had to do, whereas it didn't consume me in that way. So once I had my plan, okay, I had to have radiation, and I had to have chemo and all that sort of thing. So I was right, okay, I've got to build that into my schedule. But I'm still going to be a dad, and I'm still going to work, and I'm still going to train and run and do all that sort of thing. I've just got this extra set of responsibilities to do that involves me going to a hospital. So that was kind of my mindset around that, where I just wanted to sort of keep my life going, keep everything else going, and then bolt on this extra levels of responsibilities, and that's fine. Um, but also for me, like I said, with my running as well, that became very important to me. So I planned some running and some training milestones in. So I kind of had all these other goals that I needed to tend to, rather than cancer just being the be all and end all of what I had to do. You know, so
That's beautiful. I love the way how you compartmentalize things and you set up your own particular plan, and then you went out and you started executing it. So
yeah,
that
yeah,
is beautiful. I love the fact that you didn't say, "Oh my God, I got cancer. I'm gonna die. You know, I'm just." And what bothers me, and this is one of my pet peeves, is the fact that people get diagnosed and they curl up and they withdraw. And
mm,
you have done the opposite. You said, "Hey, I am going to live," and,
yeah,
and and that's and that is absolutely beautiful.
yeah,
So, uh,
yeah.
if you could talk about some of the things that you have done as far as your treatment goes.
Mm.
And one of the things, and I bring that up because one of the things you talked about was fasting. And that fascinated me because that is the one thing that I really haven't done, and I do want to explore that. So if you could talk about that, I'd appreciate it.
So what was that, Mark? That was fasting, wasn't it?
Yes, can you talk about your fasting?
Fasting. Well, I guess with my diet, like I didn't really go into too much into that side of things, to tell you the truth, Mark. Like I kept my diet very balanced. I kind of went through at the start, and this is what I think a lot of cancer survivors and cancer patients go through. Of like, oh, you've got to have loads of vitamin C and carrot juice and all this sort of thing, and that's fine. But I tried to keep a fairly balanced diet right the way through. The important thing for me was more around being active. I think that was the important thing for me, mate. You know, so I did experiment with some dietary changes and all that sort of thing. Um, but I think some really good advice that was given to me during that time was like, my oncologist said to me, absolutely, there's a time and place to change your diet, to make major diet changes, but maybe it's not during treatment, you know. So, but at the same time, I always had a pretty balanced diet as well. So I just kind of kept to that, without making too many changes like fasting, that sort of thing. It was more around training for me was the important thing.
Did you ever come up across a point in time that you were so weak that you couldn't train like you wanted to do? Uh,
Yeah, I think
did
so.
that
Like,
affect you?
and that was a big thing for me as well. Like my first, like I trained, and I should always say that, I was fortunate to go into the journey with a good level of fitness as it was. So I just kind of leveraged that as an advantage to go in. But even though I trained through chemo, I trained sensibly, you know, and I think you've got to be careful with that. You've got to rest proactively. So if I had a 6 week chemo regime that I had to go through, I would train like week 1, 2, 3, and 4 right the way through, and I would run maybe 30 or 40 kilometers a week going through that, but then I would taper off week 5 and week 6. So it became like how I would usually train, but in a different way, where I was factoring cancer in and thinking, right, I can train for these weeks and then I'll taper off, and then I'll hit another set of goals after that. So chemo and radiation, you know, were not too bad for me to get through with that approach. But then the second round came, and that's when I had surgery. And you know, for me, as a colorectal cancer survivor or a rectal cancer survivor, I had to have a lower anterior resection, which means like a colostomy or an ileostomy bag and a stoma and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
I think it's important, like when you have physical surgery like that, it's going to slow you down, you know, and you need to accept that and maybe not fight it so much. So I just trained sensibly through that time as well, you know. So
Wow, that's incredible.
mm,
My hat's off to you for maintaining that and keeping that. I I mean, I don't know how you did it, but I am so amazed and so happy that you did. And thank
yeah,
you for sharing
well, yeah, for me, mate, just to add to that, mate, it was more like why did I train? Like the reason that I trained through the journey had nothing to do with physical benefits or you know, running distances or anything like that. It was in here. You know, that was the main reason that I ran, because when I trained, I just had this feeling of like, this is under control. this is under control. You've got this. This is easy. You know what I mean? So, and cancer, no problem, no problem. So that was really, really good at that time. But then when you have the physical surgery and that sort of thing, which can slow you down, I had an opposite effect where I struggled a little bit because I was so dependent on my physical fitness. And all of a sudden I was in hospital for a couple of weeks, you know, so that was tricky to get through, you know, so.
So how how did your family react to all of this? Your immediate family.
Mm,
You know, when you have
yeah.
kids, it gets real. Uh, I'm not sure of the right word, but it gets. You think so much about them. You think about so much about your family. How did you deal with all of that?
Um, I guess during that original diagnosis period we spoke about before, there was a couple of weeks of just coming to terms with that, where, you know, as parents, me and my wife had to kind of discuss, like, how do we bring the kids into this? You know, what do we do? Which every family and parents, I guess, have that discussion in this situation. And at that point, we decided to bring them into the journey, you know, so that was just our approach. So we brought them in, we let them know what was happening. My little boy was only 5 at the time, so it was kind of a little bit over his head. But my 9-year-old girl kind of knew what was going on. That they knew about cancer, but maybe they didn't appreciate the gravity of the situation, which is fine. Like, I'm fine with that. But we definitely brought them in. Like, they wouldn't come to hospital and that sort of thing, but they were definitely very tuned into what was happening. And for me, they kind of had to as well, because I guess with the treatment regime that I had a lot of gadgets hanging off me. I had a stoma and chemo bags, and it would have been hard to hide. And I think I said on Tim's show, like, there was a really defining and beautiful moment where my little boy came in one night and he saw me, you know, in all my glory with all my apparatus hanging off me. And he said, Dad, you're a genius. And I said, why is that, mate? He says, you're turning into an Avenger. You know, you're turning into Iron Man. It was so
I
cool,
love it.
you know. It's the beauty of a child, of I guess the way a little boy sees his dad, right? You know, we think, oh, it's going to be terrible for them, but they see something entirely different. So, and to this day, like, they know now, or they were very involved in the journey, so they know kind of you know, what I've been through.
Wow, I love that story. That is really, really great.
Mm.
Um, Talk a little bit about you know, what you're doing now as far as cancer goes and what you're doing to share what you've learned.
Yeah,
I'm very interested in hearing that.
yeah, absolutely, mate. So, like many, I guess I had the big realization and wake up during cancer that, you know, I wanted to change my life. You know, cancer had changed my life, and I was going to respond accordingly. You know, before cancer, I existed very much in the corporate world, working for blue chip companies and doing all that sort of thing. But then you have this big wake up in your life, and you think, is this really what I want to do? You know, is this my life? You know, is this it? So now I work with cancer survivors. That's what I do now. So I guess I'm a coach, a transformational coach, and I help cancer survivors find peace and purpose after their journeys. You know, so that's what I love doing. My career over the last few years, you know, I've been transitioning towards that role. In my leadership roles, I guess I've worked all over Europe over the last few years, even during my cancer journey, which has been amazing. You know, so as an Australian, so I've done a lot, but now I'm at that stage where I'm ready to I guess embark on this new coaching journey that I love doing. It enables me to work from home and stay in Spain, where I love to be, to live this life. You know, this I've done maybe 12 years now of working away in amazing places, but now is the time to be with my family and to enjoy the time here, and to enjoy this amazing country that we now live in. You know, in the northeast of Spain.
Through your cancer journey, how has your perspective on life itself changed?
Mm. Fundamentally, and I give this example especially and it was nearly immediately, where on the morning of my treatment, of that scan that we spoke about before, I had no idea I had cancer or anything like that. And even on the drive to the hospital, I was still consumed in this world of stress and money and stuff, you know, and I was angry about things. You know, I can remember dropping my kids off to school and I got annoyed with them about something, you know, as you do, and barely said goodbye to my wife, sitting in traffic, getting angry, all that sort of thing. And then go to hospital, find out you've got cancer. And for me, that stuff just evaporated, like it just evaporated, you know, and it's the great gift that cancer can give you if you choose to take it and if you choose to see it, it's there. And on that day, even driving home, all I could think about was like, how do I tell my family? Like, how do I tell my family about cancer? And your whole world changes. And then during those few years that follow, you get exposed to this world you've never even contemplated. This crazy existence, you know, of hospital wards and chemo wards and all that sort of thing that we have to do. But your life changes. Your life has to change during something like that. So that change, I guess, really increased for me, you know, over the last few years to get me to this point. And that's when we made the decision as well to move to Spain because we were in Ireland at the time. I guess we'd always wanted to live in Spain. So we were like, life's too short. You know, we've always wanted to move to Spain. So let's just move to Spain. So we did. And we've just kept on living this new existence after cancer as a family. And it just, it just keeps on going and keeps on giving, you know, it's amazing, Mark, you know, so.
And I love the way you referred to it as a gift.
Mm,
It's, I've never heard that until you spoke that, but uh, it really is. It really is, and I'm glad you pointed that out because uh, you know, whether we choose or not whether to open that gift and explore it. And so I absolutely love the cancer community and the way that people in the cancer community, it's like a big fraternity. And you don't go through the same uh, process that you do meeting somebody who doesn't have cancer.
mm.
Am I, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think what I heard then is that within the fraternity, I guess the cancer fraternity, like we've all had this experience. So there's a shared set of, I guess, a shared experience there that maybe it's only us that can really understand once we've been through it, I guess, you know. So and yeah, nothing changes your life quite like a cancer diagnosis, I think. But but also as well, I think it's something that I've had to wrestle with as well, where I've often thought like I was stage 3 and you're stage 4, and maybe we could have either outcome. Who knows? You know, down the track. So I sometimes I challenge myself and think, should I sound so positive when there's other people that might be hearing this who might have, you know, you know, an unwanted outcome, let's say. But the way that I rationalize that is if my days on this earth have been cut short because of cancer, okay, but I'm going to make sure the rest of those days are the best days of my life. You know, I'm not going to have cancer cut my journey, my life short, and then spend that time in some sort of, you know, fear-based existence, I guess. I don't know.
You know, if I was in a different place, I'd give you a standing ovation on that. That is fantastic. I love that. I love to hear it, and I love to hear you speak because you have such a beautiful, positive attitude, and attitude is so important uh, in a cancer journey, especially. But it's especially important for anyone um,
Mm,
to have a positive attitude because especially in this day and age where there's just so much going on in our world, you
mm,
know, with the war in Ukraine,
mm,
with COVID, with all these crazy things happening, you know, people have gone through so much with COVID lockdowns and all of these things going on in their world that it's so important, even more now than ever at any time ever. It's so important that we uh, control what we put in our minds because our minds, just like our bodies need fuel, I mean need food, our minds need fuel and food as well.
yeah.
And and so to put positive things, which I love. I love to hear what you do and the way you do it, and you go about it with a smile and this glow in your face. You know, it's amazing. So if you could talk a little bit about that, um, how important attitude is with the people that you work with and for you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And attitude, I guess the main term that I use is mindset. So mindset for me is attitude in a way as well. And I guess that's what I coach about. And it's making sure that people do have, those mindsets that they have not only in their cancer journey, but in their survivorship after, where they adopt a mindset of growth, of abundance and gratitude and all those sorts of feelings that we want to experience and how we want, I guess, of what we want to experience as human beings, either with cancer or without it. It's healthy either way to live that way. But also the interesting thing, and what I've learned over the last few years, is a lot of this around mindset and cancer patients and cancer survivors is really rooted now in very tangible science, where they've done studies at Stanford and places like that now, where they're showing much better patient outcomes for people that have linked to have positive mindsets. And the way that the way that I guess the procedure is administered, the way the patient feels, and the way they're cared for has a huge input, has a huge effect on a patient's outcome. So I take that kind of philosophy, I guess, to cancer survivors and the way they live their life after cancer, where if you feel good and you feel abundant and happy, you're going to experience much better outcomes in your life, whether it's to do with cancer or not. So mindset for me is everything, because as we have as a I guess as people, we can have a dependence on, I guess, the physical side of things. Like we want something to make us better. We want that pill or that procedure or something that's going to make our life better. But so much of that sits in here and in here. So that's what I really go after as a coach when I coach people to experience those mindsets and have those shared coaching experiences with them to really turn their life around after cancer. And I think cancer survivors, I guess, are so primed for change, once they come out of this journey. Like coaches have to spend a lot of time with people to get people to that point that a cancer survivor is at when they're started their journey, because most cancer survivors will recognize a need for change. So they don't need coaching to get to that point. They're ready for it. So it's my job to really grab hold of that, to understand, what their purpose is in their life, what their change of priorities is as a result of cancer, and to really go after those life-changing goals.
Beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Is there any final word that you want to share with everyone, before we end this? Because you have a wealth of knowledge. Uh, what are your final thoughts?
Oh, my final thoughts. If you're a cancer survivor and you're watching this, if you're someone that's on the journey, then like just take this for what it is, and make these the best days of your life, whatever your outcome is. Grab hold of this, see it as the big change in your life, and grab hold of it with everything you can. Don't be a passenger on the journey, be in control. Make sure you stay healthy internally, leverage your mindset to get the best outcome that you can have, and let the doctors and the nurses do their thing as well. So I think that's and really take it for the big wake up as it is, and change your life for the best. And if you are, for instance, someone who's working this that maybe isn't a cancer survivor, and maybe just has an interest, don't wait for a wake up call. That's my advice. Don't wait for it. Just see it now, appreciate and grab your life for what it is, and live it to the best of you possibly can. So
Fantastic words. Absolutely beautiful. And it's so great to hear it coming from you, coming from somebody else besides me, which, we were talking before we started here, and I feel like almost feel like I'm talking to a duplicate of myself, and I love that. Absolutely love that. I love what
great.
you're doing.
Yeah,
I love your attitude, and thank you so much for what you do and working with cancer patients and sharing this beautiful, beautiful perspective on life. and,
Mm,
and that's and that's what's so important to me is people open your eyes, wake up, take life in, take this in because it's so amazing. And to me, before I got cancer, I'd look at the sky and it'd be the sky. But now I look at the sky and I look at how blue it is, and I look at the leaves, how green they are on the
yeah.
trees, and just uh, and I take it in, and I appreciate what my eyes are telling me, what they're showing me, and so that's uh, such a beautiful thing.
Mm,
And I'd like to thank you so much for your time, uh, Christopher Geal, everyone. He's an amazing, amazing guest, and I'm so thankful that we could share some time to get to know you and share things that were so um, that are so important to us. And so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here at To Be Your Own Hero, and make sure that take Chris's advice, because his advice is incredible. Live life to the fullest every single day. Because let's face it, if you miss one, you're not going to be happy with that. So take in every single day, every single hour, every single minute, every single second, and especially every single breath. Thank you so much for joining us here, and be sure to join us at our Cancer Conquering community on Thursdays on Clubhouse, uh, Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And also, thank you so much, Chris. We really enjoyed having you, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. And we'll see you next time on To Be Your Own Hero. Take care.